Had to start today with my friend Jamie Sherman because we met through music. He's a phenomenal guitar player, but we quickly became friends. His t-shirts have absorbed many of my tears. I've cried on his shoulder many times. Um, I just have found him to be one of the most sensitive, deep, life-changing people. And it's not just for me. He just helps everyone. He's helped so many people around him. And so I just wanted to start off AGM for the Soul series with my friend Jamie Sherman. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow. All right. That's all I need to hear for today. Bye. Honestly, thank you for that. It's for me, knowing you has been a blessing, first musically and then as a friend. And for 3 years, we've been getting together regularly, except for the last year,
Yeah.
and
We
having serious talks.
yeah, we were on this like weekly schedule where we'd hang out every week and we'd just have soul talks, and it was a wonderful influence on my life. Um, oh my
That we
goodness. Yeah.
came to be called Godot sessions because of the play Waiting for Godot. And we were like the two guys on the park bench who spend the whole play waiting for a man to show up. And yet and who never does show up. Yet during that time, they philosophize and go into the purpose and meaning of life.
Yes.
And and it's like we're not really looking for an answer per se. We're just enjoying the ride, asking the questions.
Hmm. And we brought in a third party to that. We had our friend Grady, who will also be on AGM for the Soul, hopefully, eventually. So
Can't wait.
we're working on it. Yeah. Um,
Can't wait.
I did want to, because I haven't talked to Jamie in a while, I wanted to ask you um, how you're feeling about everything that's going on right now.
Specifically COVID. Um,
Or maybe you're not paying attention. I don't know.
I sure am. Well, it's a really confusing time for me. And I think for many people I talk to, people always ask the question, how are you doing? And I really am stumped. I don't know how to answer it. I I've taken to answering this way. Well, it's somebody came up with the word languishing. I saw somewhere in print a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that's the word. I'm not depressed, but I'm not joyful. Um, I'm not bored, but I'm not excited. I'm somewhere
Mm.
in between all of that. This is new emotional territory. I keep thinking I'm waiting for this to end, but then the question always comes up: what specifically am I waiting for? What am I really excited to get back to? Because if I'm really honest with myself, I remember that before COVID struck, I was constantly internally conflicted with patterns that I kept repeating that I felt weren't serving me, and yet I didn't know what to create that was new. So I kept repeating the patterns. So am I excited to go back to those same patterns? Not really, but I don't know what is. I'm starting to get a sense of what the when is the next 2 or 3 months, but the what is. So how I'm feeling is sort of in between all that.
What's the word again? You're feeling
Languishing.
languishing. I like that word. I like that word.
Um, it's kind of gravity's a little bit heavy. Um, and it's not as strong as feeling down or depressed, because I don't feel that. Some days I feel euphoric. And some days I notice that I'm really happy about the space that's created. I'm a social person. Um, so this hasn't been a very social time. And I'm becoming more of an introvert month by month, I think. I'm reaching in to nourish myself the way introverts can do so well. I'm not relying on the external energy to recharge myself. And so the idea of coming out of this in the next couple of months, I've had my first vaccine. Second one is July. So I don't know how excited I am about suddenly all the doors being wide open, and people showing up at the door, social time, playing guitar with friends, which I miss so much, but all the social that goes with that feels like there's a bit of an edge. And I'm not sure how to process that, whether it's just getting used to it again or not. I don't know.
You've got me thinking about something. You got me thinking about some of the talks we used to have around, like, it's making me wonder if all of that excitement and energy from our past, from doing all these things, was more based on identity or ego or what have you. And maybe this moment of languishing, it could it be that in between where we're actually becoming present, we're actually living in a day-to-day kind of way, and so it doesn't have the same thrill of excitement as having these gigantic things going on. You know, not. I'm picturing like being entertained by a butterfly. That would be the ideal if you're just sitting there happily entertained by a butterfly. But there's this idea that's popping up with what you're saying. Is it possible that we're kind of just we're becoming present and that actually seems boring to our ego side?
Oh, yeah. I like that. And I like the butterfly analogy too. It's sort of gives a new meaning to the expression of butterfly effect. It's a new kind of butterfly effect.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe this is the ego reorganizing itself. This is the ego not knowing quite what to make of this. Does this feel like a prison, or does it feel like a liberation through breaking up of old structures, melting away of old patterns? It's interesting what captivity can do to the human. I was remembering something I read a long time ago. It was a syndrome attributed to American prisoners of war being released after the Second World War in Japan. Many of the prisoners were reluctant to leave the prisons. Mm-hmm. Many of them, after 2 or 3 years of captivity, decided to stay in Japan anyway. They had formed an emotional bond with their captors. So actually, I thought, am I having sort of like a Stockholm syndrome here? Is that what it is? And actually, the Stockholm syndrome didn't originate with American POWs at the end of the Second World War. It originated with a bank heist in Stockholm, Sweden, in the 1970s. Some bank robbers held up a bank. The doors were the vault. They were all pushed all the employees into the vault. They all went in the vault, and the door was closed for a weekend. When finally the door was opened, and at the end of it, these employees' lives were being threatened. At the end of the weekend, they were all friends. They kept in touch with each other for years after. There were an emotional bond formed between. True story. It was so well documented, it became known as the Stockholm syndrome.
Oh.
And wondering if this is a kind of a Stockholm syndrome. I'm at first resented the captivity of not being able to be social, not being able to go out at will. Mm-hmm. And now I formed an emotional attachment to it. I honestly, when you said, would you like to have a talk on Zoom? Of course, I was thrilled at the idea, but part of me resisted. And I thought, there it is again. Can I find an excuse not to talk to Angie?
Oh, wow.
No, of course,
yeah.
Of course I want to talk to Angie.
Of course, no.
But there was a part of me that was kind of resisting too. And I don't know what this is about.
Oh, you have just brought up another thought that I had around boundaries and how, like the way that I'm seeing my own life unfold, and how being kept captive has given me this boundary that I don't even have to say anymore. So if I, if I don't want to go out, I don't have to go out. If it's COVID, and you can see it in all businesses. I find it really funny how it's like, we can't get that package to you. It's because of COVID. And you're like, I can't remember what company it was, but anyway, this funny way that we're using this reason as a boundary setter, and as things are opening up and possibilities are opening up, I'm finding myself looking at what I'm being offered, certain things, certain gigs, certain opportunities, and having to actually say if I do or do not want to do it. And it's something that this time has given me, is to realize, like, it's really okay to not want to be as social. It's really okay to say no to stuff. It's just I've never felt like I could. So I guess I'm wondering if we're just by design. Even that little thing of saying, like, what could I come up with an excuse for Angie? Like, I've felt that over and over again with different people. And the truth is, imagine you just told the truth. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling social, or just, but we've been trained that that's insulting. It's insulting to other people. So it's just something that's coming up with me these days, of how we set boundaries, and if this is the time to figure out what they are, and how to move forward with a little more power behind them, I guess.
So you're experiencing a lot of what I've just been describing, and
Yeah, and
and and COVID therefore can be a tool to help us leverage an intention into reality with grace.
I wonder, I wonder if it can, if we're
Yeah.
aware of it. Yeah. Or yeah.
What's it going to be like after COVID when we can't use COVID anymore?
That's that's actually, sorry, that's probably where the deeper question is.
Yeah. And
And
and also and also um, how you see this whole time, 14 months in now at least, and um, is it a stumbling block or is it a stepping stone?
that's
Is it a sunset or is it a fried egg sandwich? Um, and I really want to believe there's a silver lining inherent in all of this, that we are um, willingly showing up to be architects of a whole new way of life on Earth, because everything has to change, doesn't it? I mean, they're putting band-aids on this by spending trillions of dollars that 2 years ago they didn't have. In every country, they're doing this. So do the world's economies now become reshuffled? Does the 1% collapse, or the one percenters, the world of the one percenters, the draconian? Is this the end of the draconian era? Sorry, I'm really blowing this.
yeah. Well, I guess my question around that is, what do you want to see?
I there's so many there's so many layers and levels to that question and the potential answer. Um,
Um,
I would, for the world, I would love to see a fairly non-extreme transition to a much better world where we're all have a much more loving and respectful relationship with the planet herself, where we're not abusing the animals. This highlighted the relationship of humans and animals in a horrible way when this virus first emerged from the wet markets of Wuhan. But then quickly, the awareness quickly spread to this is, it's not just them, it's us. we abuse the animal kingdom horribly globally. And this is one way that viruses jump from the animal kingdom to the human world. And plus we're destroying the earth. Everybody knows this. Is this going to be the thing that unites us finally? Because this virus doesn't know language, doesn't know borders. It doesn't care whether you're a 1%er or living in poverty. It's a great leveler, equalizer. And there's a tremendous amount of upheaval going on right now. I hope that it can be, this change can be achieved without a global revolution that could be horrible to witness. Every day in the news, there are signs of social revolution, particularly in the States, particularly this morning. Now, public school kids are shooting up their schools. That happened this morning in Idaho. The stress is taking everything to a breaking point. So what would I like to see? I'd love to see a peaceful transition to a much better world for the time I'm here and my descendants and your descendants and everyone's descendants.
That's making me think about if that's ever possible. Like when I think about healing and how like all my growth spurts to date have felt really painful. like I'm thinking about emotional ones especially. It's like in order to move forward into
Mm-hmm.
something, you've had to shed something else, and part of that requires some kind of grief process. And in that grief process, you end up with what seems to be what the world is doing. Like there's deniers, there's anger, there's I can't remember the list, but so I guess I'm wondering if our destiny is to have some kind of chaos or more chaos or what
Yeah.
have you. But having said that, we're also evolving. So maybe the future for each of our evolutions, but maybe they could be less painful. I wanted to touch a little on, like, you've got so much experience talking to psychics and mediums and listening to what they say, and have you talked to anyone? Have you gotten any new information?
Um, Not a whole lot, because the one channeler I've spoken to for years has been telling me and others who talk to him that a huge shift is coming. And this would be it. I think so. Recently, I haven't talked to this entity recently, but I've talked to people who have, and it sounds like everything is more or less sort of on target for these earth changes. The one thing he did say was that he was asked, "Do you believe in vaccines?" And he said, "Absolutely." He felt that it was a way for the world to come together, and it was a necessary medical development, and already has been. Look at the world's labs have coordinated through supercomputers and shared information to some extent, and then there's the profit takers who won't share it without a signed contract and that sort of thing, and money changing hands. But I've lost my thread here, but I don't think there's too much information there from the channeler. But can I go back a point to something you said just a minute ago about wondering if this size of a global change can happen without pain? And I'm not suggesting that it can happen without pain. It's already painful for everyone, and particularly right now in India and Nepal and other places. It's horrific. But for the globe, I mean, and yes, you and I have both gone through personal shifts, and we know that the time that we shift isn't sitting on a beach with a rum punch watching a sunset. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, throwing up and cursing God, and
Yeah.
and wishing a bolt of lightning could come down out of the sky and just end it for us right here, right now.
Yeah.
Or a Chinese rocket. Which, do you know about this?
No.
Oh, this has been in the news for a few days. I guess it's a satellite orbiting thing that got sent up in a rocket thing.
Okay.
And there's a lot of debris up there in space, and most of it's supposed to stay up there in orbit. But this one is sending a great big metal, scary, sizable thing. It's coming through the Earth's atmosphere, and it's going to land somewhere in the world this weekend.
No.
That's right. That's
Wow.
and I'm glad I'm not likely to be at 3 o'clock in the morning throwing up and cursing God and hoping lightning ends it, because I might have attracted that thing. Hopefully it'll something like 70% of the world is ocean, so there's a good chance it's going to drop in the ocean, but there's no guarantees where this thing is going to
I just can't wait for the news. It landed right on Jamie Sherman's house.
yeah, or in the yard beside, just with a thud, with a great thud, and then turned into a tourist attraction. And and Jamie retired a millionaire because of all the revenues of all the people from all over the world who want to see this thing in the yard.
Oh, I love it. I
Right?
love it.
Yeah.
Well, oh, that's great. My head like a bulldog. I got attached to something you said in there. It was around the suffering, and because I think both of us are, the world is empaths, and we're becoming more empathic, I believe. But I know that you and I have these really sensitive hearts, and I don't want to see any suffering. I don't like it. I don't want to feel it from other people, and I think that's even what your ideal world is, where you don't want to even know there's animals suffering, and you don't want to know that Mother Earth is struggling. But I guess I got thinking around you saying like people in India are really, really suffering. And I remember having this visit in Zimbabwe and noticing that people suffered there for so long under their regime, and they had brighter eyes than Canadians. Like they suffered, but it was like they just had a light in their eyes. And I remember telling someone like we have people that are suffering so much within themselves that they're jumping in front of subways. Like they this so yeah, to me there's this other kind of suffering that we that's notable, like like it's just not talked about as much, I guess. I don't even know why I had to say that. The end.
Well, the point I was taking was that something great can come out of, and usually does, or often does, come out of a painful process that I know you've gone through, and you know that I've gone through. And what you witnessed in Zimbabwe about the brightness in people's eyes. I went through a personal process, as I described to you, about 15 years ago, that went on for most of a year. I sort of called it a dark night of the soul year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, for me, very intense. And I lost weight and everything shut down and so on. And then as I was coming out of it, I know people were saying, and I'd look in the mirror and I would see black circles under my eyes, and I was skin and bone and this sort of thing. And people were saying to me, wow, what have you been doing? You look so bright. Your eyes look shiny. And I had just been to hell and back in my world. So that pattern makes me optimistic about the world going through a dark night of the soul year. or 2 years
or two, or a dark night of the soul, or two,
or a decade.
or a decade. Well, that's such a strong point. I'm actually thinking now that maybe what we call suffering is it. Maybe we need a different word for it. And it's kind of like that idea of the pain that a mother goes through when she's birthing a child. Like you're having this exact moment of like life is coming through you, and you're letting go of something old and you're bringing in something new, and there is a physical pain to it, but it's also very glorious. And yeah, maybe we need to reword that. I had a really interesting moment yesterday. I had been in an interview, and it was like one of the first interviews where I felt like I had to really grasp onto who I really am, because it was with Les Stroud, and it was for with CBC, and it just was one of those. He's so masculine, and he's got a lot of like very firm on his beliefs, and our beliefs don't match each other. It's surprising we're even friends, like, but we are. We're willing to open up our minds to those beliefs. But for me, I found it like this real push to just really be my sensitive self and stay in that. And then afterwards, I had this kind of like shame hangover of like everything in me wanted to like punish me almost for being my vulnerable self. And it was like it's almost like my identity was like, you gotta be ashamed, you gotta feel guilty, you're no one's gonna like you, you're gonna lose your career. All these things started happening, and I don't even know why, again, why I I think it's just around suffering. And oh, sorry, the bottom line was that the suffering, I wanted to say that I felt ashamed, but instead I kind of transcended into saying I'm growing, and my ego's trying to let go of something and be real gentle here, because this is, I just need to let this happen and not fight so hard with it. Maybe the resistance is the suffering.
Yeah, and if I was an educated man, I might look at that word suffering, and is it one of those words that in the Latin root of the word itself there is two ideas coming together that is describing and created the word suffering, which we put a negative connotation on, but really is no, it's about growth and change, and
Yeah.
maybe it's really about shattering old structures, which is messy but necessary to create the space to create something new. I think you and I've talked so much.
Mhm.
And one thing we've talked about is sharing some frustration over having enough awareness to realize there's a part of us that wants to transcend old patterns. But a combination of just maybe a lack of willpower, or maybe just not having the tools, or not being able to figure out how to do it, is creating suffering. And this is like a cosmic baseball bat coming into a china shop and blowing the whole thing up, and now there's space.
I
And
love that.
and this space is the gift of COVID-19.
I
It's the
love
silver lining. I think that's what I'm hoping.
I can already feel, I already feel better having talked about this, but yeah, I'm really, when you were talking about suffering and where it might have come from, and I think from our from just religious influences, uh I almost wonder if we add if we equate suffering to punishment,
Mm,
and if we could take,
absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And this feeling of resistance within us is mainly just that, yeah, if I feel weird, it's because I'm being punished for something, and then you can't kind of connect with your loving higher self. My alarm just went off, so I we only have 5 minutes left, but I guess if if millions of people got to listen to you today, uh, what would you want to tell them? What would you want to tell them today?
I would want to say if hang in there, trust this process. We're all feeling something weird or painful. For some people, it's really intense. For other people, not so much. But it would be hang in there, and just like Angie and I have just been talking, that the suffering. There's something very wonderful about what suffering is, because it is really being present to change. And if we work with it, then we notice that it's just like you started out this conversation with. It takes us right to that spot of wondering if how much of this is our ego resisting. And this is bigger than our egos. We're going to be fine.
Ooh.
We're going to be fine. We wouldn't have been fine without it. That's another way to look at it. Without COVID-19, the earth was on a downward trajectory, with oil polluting the air, the water, the land, all the wars keeping going, basically over oil. One way or another, all the wars are about oil, and religious differences, and so on. This is the great equalizer. This is our opportunity. And I really sense we're coming to a point of divide, just like in American politics, that they are like a homeopathic dose of what's happening globally. We're all at this divide. And this is
Oh,
the time. This is the time when nature, with the universe, God is saying, it's up to you. You get to decide, but you must decide. Whatever it is you're vacillating about, now is the time. Now is the time to take a stand. Now is the time to show up for your life. Show up for what you believe in, and trust the process, because it's a good one.
oh my God, I got goosebumps and I'm gonna start crying. That was so beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, this might stop recording now. We'll just assume this is that.
Yeah.